Mastering the art of thinking, speaking, and influencing transforms every interaction into an opportunity for success. This audiobook will equip you with actionable strategies, practical routines, and psychological insights that elevate your confidence, communication, and decision-making skills every single day. You'll discover how to structure your thoughts, speak with authority, persuade ethically, and handle objections with tactical precision, turning challenges into stepping stones toward mastery. Follow these proven techniques consistently and watch your influence and effectiveness grow dramatically. Subscribe now to unlock all 10 chapters and step into a life of clarity, power, and lasting impact. Number 1. Master mindset before every message. A quiet room before words are spoken is where power is built. The instant before a sentence leaves the mouth is the most fertile moment for influence, the place where thought becomes action, where intention either sharpens into clarity or dissolves into noise. Preparing the mind before sending a message is not a theatrical warm-up. It is the core discipline of effective communication. The mind that enters a conversation shapes the outcome. A calm, focused mind makes fewer concessions to fear, ego, and distraction. It hears more clearly, chooses words with purpose, and navigates resistance with steady resolve. This chapter teaches how to craft that mind, not as an abstract ideal, but as a set of practical habits, quick rituals, and durable practices you can use every single time you prepare to speak. Begin with the simple rule. 1 objective. Conversations scatter when the speaker chases many goals at once. Before composing a single sentence, decide the one outcome that matters most. Is the goal to inform, to persuade, to build trust, or to close a decision? Pick one primary aim and a secondary safeguard, a small, non-negotiable boundary that protects dignity and clarity if the conversation goes sideways. Then hold that objective like a lens focusing sunlight. All phrasing, tone, and timing should be calibrated to that chosen aim. A practical pre-message ritual compresses intention into action. Spend 60 seconds on this routine before any important message. Breathe, ground, name, and frame. First, breathe deliberately. Inhale for 4 counts, hold for 2, exhale for 6. That pattern slows the heart and shifts the brain from reactivity to deliberation. Feel the air at the nostrils. Notice the expansion in the chest and belly. Sensory detail matters. It pulls attention into the body and out of anxious loops. Second, ground the body. Plant both feet. Feel weight distributed through the soles. Relax the jaw. Open the throat by tilting the chin slightly down. Then back up. The position of the body influences the voice. Steady posture produces a steady voice. Third, name one fear and set it aside as an observer. Thought often sabotages by imagining catastrophic results. Name the fear plainly. Fear of sounding ignorant, or fear of rejection. Naming reduces its charge. Convert the fear into a question you can answer. What evidence shows this fear is true? The act of converting fear into evidence-based questions deflates panic and creates a rational stance. Fourth, frame the opening line in one crisp sentence. The opening sentence is the doorway. Make it simple, clearly tied to your objective, and honest. A well-crafted opening reduces friction and accelerates mutual understanding. Mental rehearsal is not phony acting. It is rehearsal of neural pathways. Spend 90 seconds imagining 3 realities: the best-case outcome, the most likely outcome, and the worst-case outcome. Visualize sensory details, what the room looks like, how the other person's expression changes, the cadence of the exchange. For each scenario, practice one adaptive response, a sentence or question that keeps the conversation moving toward the objective. This trains quick recovery and prevents surprise from producing retreat. Practicing the worst-case response first is counterintuitive, but effective. When an objection or coldness arrives in reality, the mind has already rendezvoused with an answer, and so meets it with composure instead of scrambling. Language matters. Replace fluffy phrases with concrete verbs. Instead of saying, "I feel like maybe we should consider," say, "I recommend we try." Replace qualifiers that dilute authority. "I think," "maybe," "sort of," "I hope," with precise actions or observations. That does not mean removing warmth or collaboration. Authoritative language can be gentle and invitational. A disciplined mind chooses verbs that reflect agency and responsibility. Keep sentences short in the first 30 seconds of any message. Short sentences are easier to process, reduce misinterpretation, and create a rhythm that feels steady. Use one metaphor or one image if it clarifies a complex idea. Avoid a parade of metaphors that distract. Emotion is informative, not a directive. Notice emotional arousal as data. It signals values, triggers, and priorities. When anger or anxiety rises, label it internally anger or heat, and convert it into an actionable question. What boundary needs protection here? Or what assumption needs clarification? That small translation moves emotion from a tidal wave into a current that can be steered. Stoic practice recommends imagining the outcome without embellishment. That kind of clear-eyed rehearsal trains a mind to respond with reason under pressure. Replace reactive phrases like, "you always," with descriptive statements about observable behavior or outcomes. That preserves dignity and focuses the other person on change rather than blame. Timing is a tactical element, often overlooked. The mind that masters timing controls the tempo of influence. Ask fewer questions initially and listen more. The first third of a conversation is an information-gathering window. Frame 2 open questions that invite the other person to speak about their priorities or constraints. Questions reveal position and create psychological space. When establishing your point, anchor it to a shared value or mutual benefit. People resist when change is framed as loss. Reframe proposed actions as steps towards something both parties value. Use the phrase, "so you can," or "so that," to connect action with outcome. This small rhetorical pivot reduces resistance and increases cooperation. Micro habits create durable transformation. Begin each day with a 5-minute journal exercise that primes the mind for clear communication. Write one sentence for your daily objective, one sentence naming a fear or obstacle, and one sentence describing the smallest action that advances the objective. Those 3 lines align attention and reduce morning drift. Before any meeting, do a 2-minute scan of recent facts and decisions relevant to the topic. Memory is fallible. Refreshing key facts prevents stumbles and increases credibility. After a critical conversation, perform a short debrief. What worked, what did not, and one actionable improvement for next time. This cyclical feedback is the engine of mastery. Words can be rehearsed. Keep a short folder of prepared phrases for common moments. Opening lines, ways to decline unhelpful tangents, empathetic bridges, and close sequences that summarize and assign next steps. Examples: the most important thing for me is X. Help me understand your priority. I hear that, and here is the proposal. And so the next step is X by Y date. Having these phrases internalized reduces cognitive load and prevents improvisation from becoming panic. Practice them aloud until the tongue finds them without friction. The voice follows the mind follows rehearsal. Silence is an instrument. A measured pause after making a point signals confidence and invites response. Most people rush to fill silence, but a deliberate break allows the other person to process and often reveals their priorities. Use the 3-count pause after a main point. Breathe through it and maintain steady posture. The pause also gives your mind a moment to observe the reaction and choose the next precise move. Influence without manipulation is a moral discipline. Ethical persuasion builds consent, not coercion. Frame proposals transparently, show trade-offs, and honor the autonomy of the other party. When influence is exercised as service, improving a shared outcome, resistance becomes collaboration. Keep a mental ledger of integrity. If a promise is made, fulfill it. If new information changes the recommendation, communicate that promptly. Trust compounds slowly and is consumed quickly. A disciplined mind treats trust as an asset to be guarded. Finally, build resilience through exposure. Small acts of intentional communication produce incremental growth. Start with low-stakes experiments. A short, clear message in a team chat, a brief reframing during a casual conversation, a pause before responding to a provocative text. Each practice session is a rehearsal for larger moments. Track progress with simple metrics, fewer defensive reactions, more direct responses, or faster closure of decisions. Success is not perfection, but consistent reduction in avoidable friction. The mind that precedes a message determines its effect. Training that mind is a daily practice of clarity, humility, and courage. Breathe to center, name the objective, rehearse realities, choose exact words, listen deeply, and act with ethical intent. Each message becomes an opportunity to demonstrate steadiness rather than drama. Over time, this steady practice turns nervous patterns into calm competence. The person who masters the mindset before every message discovers that influence is not the loudness of the voice, but the steadiness of the mind behind it. Carry that steadiness into every sentence, and influence will follow as the natural consequence of disciplined thought. Number 2. Structure thoughts for instant clarity. Clarity is the bridge between thought and action. Without it, ideas remain tangled, messages stumble, and influence fades before it begins. Structuring thoughts is not a luxury reserved for writers or leaders. It is a daily necessity for anyone who wants to communicate effectively, make decisions quickly, and act decisively. The mind that organizes itself before speaking gains a sharpness that cuts through confusion, hesitation, and noise. Every conversation, email, meeting, or presentation becomes more impactful when the internal architecture of thought is solid. This chapter explores practical strategies for transforming scattered thinking into precise, actionable, and compelling communication. Begin by understanding that thoughts are not fixed. They are raw material, fluid, and often chaotic. Left unattended, they become a jumble of half-formed ideas, conflicting priorities, and emotional impulses. To structure thoughts effectively, first externalize them. Writing, sketching, or even speaking aloud organizes neurons into patterns the brain can process more efficiently. For example, before an important discussion, take 3 minutes to jot down the key points you want to convey. Don't worry about phrasing. Focus on ideas, facts, and priorities. The act of translating mental clutter into visible form creates space, reduces cognitive load, and illuminates hidden gaps in reasoning. Prioritization is the core of structured thinking. The human mind can hold only a limited number of elements in working memory before confusion arises. Identify 3 to 5 primary points for every message. Rank them by importance or logical flow. Consider not only what needs to be communicated, but also the order that makes the most sense to the listener. Leading with the most critical idea creates a strong foundation, ensuring attention is captured immediately. Following with supportive details provides depth, but avoid overloading with tangents. Each supporting idea should reinforce the primary point, like bricks laid carefully to build a wall rather than scattered stone. Simplicity is a strategic tool. Complexity in communication is often mistaken for intelligence, but it frequently obscures meaning. Use short, precise sentences. Trim unnecessary modifiers and qualifiers that dilute your message. Instead of saying, "I think it might be beneficial if we consider the possibility of exploring alternative options," reframe as, "We should explore alternatives." Every word that does not serve a clear purpose is a distraction. Think of words as currency. Spend them deliberately, and avoid inflationary excess. This discipline creates a rhythm in speech and writing that invites comprehension instead of resistance. Visual structures enhance clarity. Organizing thoughts into frameworks, such as cause and effect, problem and solution, or chronological sequence, helps both the speaker and listener track ideas. When preparing a presentation, mentally map the trajectory of thought. Ask, where does the audience start? Where must they arrive? Each sentence should serve as a stepping stone toward the destination. Lists, bullets, or numbered sequences are not arbitrary conventions. They mirror the brain's natural preference for order and pattern recognition. People understand ideas faster when presented in structured layers, rather than in a stream of consciousness. Transitions are often overlooked, but crucial. The mind that leaps from one point to another without signaling the shift creates cognitive friction. Use bridging phrases to guide the listener. The next step is building on that idea, or this connects. Transitions act as signposts, helping the audience follow the flow of thought. They also give the speaker a moment to recalibrate, ensuring coherence and preventing digression. A conversation or presentation with smooth transitions feels effortless, even when the underlying preparation is meticulous. Clarity also requires anticipating questions and objections. Structured thought includes the awareness of gaps, counterpoints, and areas of potential misunderstanding. Imagine the mind of the other person. What is unclear? What assumptions might they make? Preparing answers in advance converts ambiguity into confidence. Each objection becomes an opportunity to demonstrate foresight rather than a disruption to authority. By mapping possible responses and integrating them into the structure, the message remains intact, and persuasion gains resilience. And analogies and examples are powerful scaffolding tools. Abstract concepts become tangible when anchored in relatable experience. Choose comparisons that resonate with the audience's context. Avoid multiple analogies that compete for attention. One strong image or story strengthens comprehension. For instance, if explaining a strategic pivot in business, liken it to steering a ship around a storm rather than jumping between different vehicles. This precision ensures the metaphor enhances rather than muddies the point. Properly placed illustrations give the mind a concrete reference, accelerating understanding and recall. Mental rehearsal solidifies structure. Practice the flow of ideas silently or aloud. Time the delivery. Notice awkward points, missing links, or areas where the narrative may stall. Rehearsal is not memorization. It is building a flexible mental skeleton that guides improvisation. The mind that has walked through the sequence before speaking navigates real-time interactions with poise and precision. Rehearsal also allows for micro-adjustments in tone, emphasis, and pacing, enhancing clarity without sacrificing authenticity. Listening complements structured thought. The clearest mind becomes irrelevant if it does not engage with the other party. Structure your thoughts to leave space for input. Use active listening techniques. Paraphrase. Ask clarifying questions, and acknowledge key points. This reciprocal structure transforms communication from monologue to dialogue. It also provides additional data to adjust the internal architecture of thought dynamically, ensuring relevance and resonance. Daily habits reinforce structured thinking. Begin each morning with a brief reflection on priorities, objectives, and obstacles. Spend 5 minutes outlining key ideas for the day and writing or mentally rehearsing main conversations. Practice summarizing complex topics in 1 to 2 sentences. This compression exercise strengthens the ability to convey ideas concisely under pressure. Over time, these small routines cultivate a mind naturally inclined toward clarity, organization, and rapid articulation. Structured thought is also deeply tied to emotional regulation. The mind clouded by stress or agitation cannot organize ideas efficiently. Techniques like controlled breathing, short meditation, or body-centered grounding reset the cognitive system. A calm mind finds logical pathways easily and resists distraction from emotional turbulence. Structure and emotional balance are inseparable. Mastery of one supports the other. When emotions are acknowledged but managed, clarity gets effortless rather than forced. Writing reinforces speaking. Regular journaling or outlining of ideas helps solidify the mental frameworks used in verbal communication. A simple habit of capturing insights, decisions, and lessons in writing builds a mental library for rapid retrieval during conversation. Over time, the mind instinctively organizes information into coherent sequences, reducing the need for on-the-spot improvisation. Writing also provides a mirror to examine gaps in reasoning, highlight redundancies, and refine articulation. Finally, the mind that structures thoughts cultivates patience. Instant clarity is rarely magic. It is the product of deliberate mental training. Resist the temptation to fill pauses with filler words. Allow moments of silence to surface the next point. Recognize that processing time enhances accuracy and authority. Patience converts fragmented ideas into coherent narratives. Each pause is an opportunity to refine the mental map before action, ensuring every word aligns with intention. Structured thinking transforms not only communication but the very way a person navigates life. Decisions are faster, priorities clearer, and interactions more effective. It is the difference between wandering in a fog and moving with decisive purpose. Every conversation becomes an exercise in precision, every decision a reflection of clarity. The mind that routinely organizes itself before speaking gains authority, trust, and influence. Structuring thoughts is more than a skill. It is a discipline that amplifies intellect, strengthens character, and cultivates long-term impact. Those who master it act not out of chaos but from deliberate, measured understanding. Each word, each pause, each sentence becomes a tool to shape reality, rather than a chance utterance lost to confusion. The practice of thought structuring is the cornerstone of communication mastery, and its benefits ripple through every aspect of personal and professional life, leaving clarity, competence, and confidence in its wake. Number 3. Speak with calm, assertive authority. Authority is not demanded. It is quietly claimed through presence, consistency, and composure. Speaking with calm, assertive authority is less about volume or dominance, and more about internal steadiness translating into deliberate expression. Every word, pause, and intonation carries the weight of intention when a speaker embodies control and confidence. The voice becomes a channel of clarity, a conduit for influence that commands attention not through force, but through conviction and precision. To master this art, the foundation must be built within, cultivating a state of mind that resists agitation, navigates tension with balance, and communicates without unnecessary embellishment or hesitation. The first step is cultivating self-possession. Anxiety, frustration, and reactive emotion erode authority faster than any poorly chosen word. A steady internal state is reflected outwardly, signaling reliability and competence. Developing this calm begins with awareness, noticing how the body and mind respond to pressure before and during speech. Observe the rise of tension in the chest, the quickening of the pulse, or the tightness in the throat. Awareness alone interrupts automatic reactions and provides a window for conscious adjustment. Techniques such as deep diaphragmatic breathing, grounding through posture, and mental rehearsal create a physiological baseline from which authority can naturally emerge. Voice control is a tangible manifestation of calm, assertive authority. Speak deliberately, with measured pace, allowing each word to carry its weight. Avoid rushing. Urgency diminishes credibility. Silence between points is not empty. It is a vessel for emphasis. Pauses let the mind of the listener absorb the information, giving your words presence and resonance. Emphasize key words through slight changes in pitch or volume without resorting to shouting. Authority in speech arises from consistency in tone, steadiness in rhythm, and the precision of articulation. The listener unconsciously reads your composure as mastery, trustworthiness, and language itself must reflect clarity and confidence. Avoid overqualifying statements with "I think," "maybe," or "sort of," which dilute impact. Instead, use declarative sentences that assert observation or intention. Replace tentative phrasing with direct alternatives. "This is the approach," "We will proceed this way," or "Here is the evidence." Authority does not rely on confrontation but on unambiguous communication that leaves little room for doubt. When choices are presented confidently, decisions become easier for others to follow. This directness communicates certainty without arrogance, creating alignment rather than resistance. Listening is an integral part of assertive communication. Authority is not a monologue, but a dynamic interaction. Active listening conveys respect, attentiveness, and situational awareness. Nodding subtly, summarizing key points, or asking clarifying questions demonstrates understanding, while maintaining composure. Authority is enhanced when responses are measured and relevant, showing that every intervention is intentional rather than reactive. Silence after someone speaks conveys both respect and control, allowing the speaker to gather thoughts and craft a deliberate reply. Nonverbal cues anchor authority in physical presence. Posture, gestures, and eye contact signal confidence even before words are spoken. Stand or sit upright, shoulders relaxed but aligned, feet grounded and head held level. Open gestures that complement speech reinforce credibility, while fidgeting, crossed arms, or rapid movements erode perceived confidence. Eye contact establishes connection and signals attentiveness, but it must be natural, not fixed or intimidating. Subtle facial expressions convey empathy, understanding, and engagement, adding depth to verbal communication without diluting assertiveness. Preparation strengthens authority exponentially. A calm, assertive presence is easiest to maintain when knowledge is solid and understanding comprehensive. Anticipate questions, objections, and counter-arguments before entering any conversation. Organize ideas logically, rehearse phrasing, and mentally map the flow of discussion. Familiarity with the subject reduces hesitation, prevents uncertainty from creeping into speech, and allows for confident improvisation. Authority is grounded in competence. The more prepared the mind, the steadier the delivery. Emotional regulation is a cornerstone of assertive authority. Unexpected challenges or confrontational interactions often trigger defensive reactions, but a controlled response transforms tension into influence. When confronted with disagreement, take a brief internal pause to assess the situation objectively. Responding with composure demonstrates strength, while reactive defensiveness undermines credibility. A calm demeanor disarms tension and encourages rational dialogue. Authority is most evident, not when pressure is absent, but when it is met with measured, thoughtful responses. Strategic phrasing reinforces influence without coercion. Use framing techniques that guide understanding rather than demand compliance. Preface points with context, based on the data, or considering our priorities, provides rationale and position statements as reasoned guidance. When requesting action, employ inclusive language. Let's ensure this outcome rather than you must do this. Calm authority balances assertiveness with respect, aligning direction with shared objectives rather than creating conflict. Micro-habits reinforce daily mastery of calm, assertive speech. Begin each day by reading aloud concise, structured statements or passages, focusing on tone, pace, and articulation. Record brief reflections on verbal interactions, noting where authority was conveyed effectively and where improvement is possible. Practice breathing techniques and posture adjustments during routine activities, integrating these habits into muscle memory so they become second nature in high-pressure moments. Over time, the body and mind internalize the mechanics of authoritative speech, reducing reliance on conscious effort and increasing natural fluency. Storytelling enhances calm authority by contextualizing information and engaging attention. Relating ideas through carefully chosen narratives allows complex concepts to be communicated with clarity and resonance. Stories provide a structure that the mind can follow easily, reducing cognitive friction and creating a sense of shared experience. Use them sparingly, focusing on relevance and impact rather than volume. A single well-placed anecdote conveys credibility, illustrates understanding, and maintains composure simultaneously. Boundary setting supports assertive communication. Authority includes the courage to say no, redirect, or limit distractions without hesitation. Establishing boundaries clarifies expectations and signals confidence. Simple statements such as, "I can address that after this discussion," or "let's focus on the main objective first," maintain focus while preserving composure. Boundaries prevent diffusion of attention, reduce stress, and communicate that the speaker's time and attention are valued and directed deliberately. Adaptability complements authority. Speaking with assertive calm does not mean rigidity. It requires the flexibility to respond to evolving situations while maintaining poise. Adjust phrasing, tone, or emphasis based on feedback, environmental cues, or emotional shifts without compromising composure. Authority thrives on the ability to remain steady in intention while navigating dynamic circumstances. This adaptability signals competence and inspires confidence in others, demonstrating that influence is rooted in skill rather than ego. Reflection solidifies growth. After conversations or presentations, assess performance objectively. Identify moments of strength, areas of hesitation, and lessons learned. Reflection strengthens awareness of habitual patterns and enables refinement of both speech and presence. Over time, deliberate reflection transforms instinctive reactions into deliberate, disciplined responses, reinforcing the foundation of calm, assertive authority. The person who speaks with calm, assertive authority exerts influence, not through force, but through disciplined presence, mastery of thought, and measured action. Each word carries intention, each pause communicates confidence, and every gesture signals balance. Authority becomes the natural expression of a mind in control of itself, capable of guiding, persuading, and inspiring, without coercion or pretense. It is cultivated, practiced, and refined, emerging from consistent internal work rather than external theatrics. Those who master this approach discover that influence is earned quietly, steadily, and enduringly, leaving a lasting impression that resonates far beyond the moment of speech. Number 4. Use stories to move decisions. Stories have a unique power to shape perception, influence choices, and move people toward action. Logic alone rarely sparks change. Facts can inform, but they seldom inspire. The human mind responds instinctively to narratives, patterns, and emotional journeys. When a story is crafted deliberately, it becomes a vehicle for guiding decisions, illuminating possibilities, and creating alignment. To use stories effectively, one must understand the mechanics of narrative, the emotional triggers that resonate with listeners, and the strategic purpose behind every anecdote. This is not about embellishment or manipulation. It is about communicating in a way that connects ideas to human experience, making decisions feel natural rather than forced. Begin by recognizing that every story has a kernel of truth. Authenticity is the foundation of influence. A story that feels contrived immediately generates resistance. Identify experiences, lessons, or events that illustrate the principle or choice you wish to communicate. These can be personal experiences, historical examples, or professional case studies. What matters is that the story reflects real dynamics, challenges, and outcomes. The credibility of the storyteller directly impacts the persuasiveness of the message. When listeners sense honesty and insight, they are more receptive to the decision you are guiding them toward. Structure is critical. A story that wanders loses attention, while a focused narrative creates clarity and momentum. Begin with context. Introduce the situation, key players, and stakes. The listener should quickly understand what is happening and why it matters. Then highlight the conflict or challenge, the obstacle that requires resolution. This creates tension, the element that captures attention and engages the mind. Without a problem or choice, a story is inert. Once the challenge is clear, reveal the actions taken, decisions made, and thought processes involved. Finally, close with the outcome and the lesson learned. Every element of the story should reinforce the principle you wish to communicate, guiding the listener's mind along a clear trajectory. Emotion anchors influence. Decisions are rarely purely rational. They are intertwined with feeling. When telling a story, evoke senses, reactions, and internal states. Describe the sights, sounds, and textures of the environment, the uncertainty in the air, or the relief at a breakthrough. This sensory immersion helps listeners inhabit the experience mentally and emotionally. When they feel the stakes, the risks, and the rewards, they are more likely to internalize the lesson and respond accordingly. A well-told story creates a mental simulation that transforms abstract ideas into lived experience, making the decision seem logical and urgent simultaneously. Timing determines effectiveness. Stories should be deployed strategically, not indiscriminately. Introduce narratives at moments when attention is high and when the lesson is directly relevant to the choice at hand. Lead with short, impactful stories to illustrate a key point before diving into deeper explanation. A brief anecdote can frame the decision, set emotional context, and prepare the listener to receive further information with openness. Avoid overloading with multiple narratives that compete for focus. Each story should serve a precise purpose, reinforcing a single principle or action. Characters anchor the message. Listeners relate to individuals, not abstract concepts. Introduce personas with motivations, dilemmas, and agency. A decision taken by a relatable character becomes a blueprint for action. Highlight the thought process behind choices, emphasizing reasoning, resilience, and ethical consideration. When the audience sees a character navigate complexity successfully, it models behavior in a way that mere instruction cannot. Characters provide an entry point for empathy, allowing listeners to step into the story and project themselves into the outcomes. Conflict and resolution are central to impact. Every story should contain a tension that mirrors the decision at hand, Highlight the trade-offs, doubts, and obstacles faced. Resolution demonstrates the path forward and the consequences of action or inaction. A story that culminates in a decision illustrates the stakes, communicates priorities, and implicitly guides the audience towards similar reasoning. Avoid simplistic endings. Real influence emerges when challenges feel real and solutions feel earned, not contrived. The narrative arc should mirror the cognitive and emotional steps necessary to reach the desired decision. Brevity and precision amplify retention. A story overloaded with details or subplots risks losing focus. Trim every sentence to ensure relevance, impact, and clarity. Each moment in the narrative should serve the dual purpose of engaging the listener and reinforcing the decision framework. Strategic repetition of key phrases or motifs can strengthen recall, but avoid redundancy. The goal is to make the story memorable, actionable, and resonant without overwhelming the mind with unnecessary information. Questions embedded within stories enhance engagement. Invite listeners to reflect, compare, or predict outcomes as the narrative unfolds. For example, pause at a critical decision point. What would you do in this situation? This prompts internal simulation, aligning the audience's thought process with the story's logic. Interactive engagement strengthens commitment to the lesson and encourages personal application. It converts passive listening into active cognitive participation, increasing the likelihood that the decision you are illustrating will be internalized and enacted. Language shapes perception. Use concrete verbs, vivid imagery, and emotionally charged adjectives judiciously. Avoid abstraction that distances the audience from experience. Replace generic descriptors like good outcome with specific consequences, such as the client renewed the contract, securing 6 months of stability. The more tangible the result, the easier it is for listeners to relate, understand, and act. Carefully chosen language transforms stories from entertainment into instruments of influence. Practice is essential. The ability to deploy stories effectively requires rehearsal, refinement, and adaptation. Review narratives for clarity, emotional impact, and alignment with intended outcomes. Practice delivery to ensure pacing, emphasis, and tone maximize engagement. Observe listener responses, adjusting details or emphasis to maintain connection. Skilled storytellers internalize multiple variations of the same lesson, allowing flexibility while preserving core messages. The disciplined rehearsal of stories turns them from casual anecdotes into powerful catalysts for decision-making. Stories also provide ethical leverage. They persuade without coercion by illustrating consequences, highlighting opportunities, and modeling sound judgment. Ethical storytelling respects autonomy, offering insight rather than pressure. When listeners see the logic, emotion, and consequence woven naturally into a narrative, they reach decisions with alignment and conviction. Influence through story is sustainable because it cultivates understanding and agreement rather than reliance on external authority or manipulation. Integration with logic strengthens impact. Pair narratives with supporting evidence, clear reasoning, or actionable steps. The story sets the stage emotionally. Concrete data or structured instructions solidify confidence in the decision. The combination of narrative and rationale creates a holistic persuasion model that addresses both the heart and mind. This dual approach ensures that decisions are informed, committed, and executable. Reflection and iteration reinforce mastery. After each application of story and influencing decisions, evaluate effectiveness. Which elements resonated? Where did attention falter? How did listeners internalize the lesson? Continuous refinement improves clarity, emotional resonance, and impact. Over time, a repertoire of versatile, compelling stories grows, ready to be deployed in context with precision and authenticity. This iterative approach transforms storytelling from an art into a disciplined tool for influence. Stories move decisions because they connect principles to lived experience, evoke emotional understanding, and model actionable pathways. When crafted with intentionality, authenticity, and structure, narratives create mental simulations that guide reasoning, illuminate consequences, and align values. The disciplined storyteller weaves context, conflict, character, and resolution into a sequence that mirrors the cognitive and emotional steps necessary for decision-making. Each story is a bridge between abstract ideas and tangible action, making choices clear, compelling, and achievable. Mastery of storytelling transforms communication into influence, shaping outcomes through understanding rather than imposition, leaving decisions informed, confident, and aligned with purpose. Number 5. Command rooms through body language. The power of a room is rarely dictated by words alone. It is carried in posture, movement, gaze, and the subtle rhythm of presence. Body language is the unspoken language of influence, often perceived before a single sentence is uttered. Commanding a room does not rely on volume or theatrics. It is the result of deliberate, mindful physicality that communicates confidence, authority, and clarity. Every gesture, stance, and micro-expression signals intention and shapes perception. Mastery of body language is not about manipulation. It is the alignment of internal discipline with external expression, allowing the mind to guide others without overt dominance. The foundation begins with posture. A solid stance creates both internal stability and external authority. Feet grounded, shoulders relaxed yet aligned, chest open without rigidity, and head level convey readiness and composure. Small adjustments in posture affect confidence as much as perception. Leaning slightly forward signals engagement and attentiveness, while controlled backward shifts indicate thoughtfulness and reflection. Subtle shifts in weight distribution communicate focus and intention. A person who occupies space deliberately, with balance and poise, exudes authority without the need for aggression. Eye contact is another crucial element. It serves as a bridge between speaker and audience, creating presence and connection. Maintain consistent, natural eye engagement with individuals or the group, avoiding darting or fixed staring, which can signal nervousness or intimidation. The gaze should be steady but flexible, cycling through the audience in a pattern that acknowledges each person while maintaining composure. Eye contact conveys attention and respect, but it also signals confidence and control. A measured gaze communicates that the speaker is both aware and unshakable, inviting trust and engagement. Gestures amplify meaning and reinforce intention. Purposeful hand movements, aligned with speech, create emphasis and clarity. Open palms, controlled motions, and deliberate pointing can underscore key points without appearing theatrical. Avoid repetitive or erratic movements, which distract and undermine authority. Micro-gestures, slight tilts of the head, finger positioning, or subtle shifts in stance signal listening, evaluation, and responsive. Gestural precision mirrors cognitive clarity, and the audience intuitively responds to a body that moves with coherence and intent. Facial expressions anchor communication. A calm, composed face conveys confidence, while subtle expressions demonstrate empathy, acknowledgement, or consideration. Avoid excessive animation or rigidity. Both can detract from authority. Smiles should be intentional, serving to ease tension or reinforce connection, not as a mask to cover insecurity. When responding to challenging questions or unexpected developments, a composed expression reassures the audience and maintains perceived control. Micro-expressions can also subtly reinforce points. Raised eyebrows to highlight surprise or curiosity, a slight nod to signal agreement, or a measured frown to denote seriousness. Spatial awareness enhances presence. Commanding a room requires understanding and controlling the dynamics of space. Positioning oneself where visibility, audibility, and engagement are maximized allows the speaker to naturally dominate attention without overt assertion. Movement should be purposeful, stepping forward to emphasize points, shifting position to include all listeners, or pausing strategically in open spaces to signal control. Avoid aimless pacing, which communicates uncertainty or distraction. The strategic use of space conveys authority through alignment with natural perception patterns. Breath and vocal resonance reinforce physical presence. Deep, diaphragmatic breathing stabilizes posture, calms the nervous system, and produces a voice that carries without strain. A resonant voice communicates confidence and presence, subtly reinforcing authority. Pauses between sentences or points are as important as speech itself. They allow the mind to process, the audience to absorb, and the speaker to maintain control. Coordinating breath with gesture and movement creates a harmonious, commanding rhythm that is both engaging and persuasive. Attention to micro-movements shapes perception subconsciously. Small adjustments, such as hand placements, stance, and subtle shifts in weight, can indicate decisiveness, readiness, or reflection. Conversely, fidgeting, tapping, or shifting excessively signals uncertainty. Awareness of these nuances allows for conscious modulation, projecting competence even under stress. Training the body to respond predictably under pressure strengthens internal confidence, aligning physical signals with mental clarity. Listening through body language enhances influence. A commanding presence includes the ability to absorb input without reactive tension. Nodding subtly, leaning in to acknowledge points, or tilting the head to demonstrate consideration shows engagement while maintaining authority. Observing others' nonverbal cues provides insight into emotional states, readiness, and resistance, allowing adjustments to be made dynamically. Skilled communicators interpret gestures and expressions in real time, adapting posture, expression, and proximity to maintain control of the room. Preparation extends to clothing, grooming, and environmental adaptation. External appearance subtly influences perception, and aligning attire with context communicates professionalism and awareness. Clothing that allows freedom of movement, reflects confidence, and avoids distraction ensures that body language remains the primary signal of authority. Awareness of environmental factors, such as lighting, seating arrangements, and spatial constraints, enables subtle positioning that maximizes influence without overt assertion. Rehearsal and reflection solidify mastery. Practicing speeches, presentations, or interactions while consciously monitoring posture, gesture, and expression trains muscle memory and builds confidence. Recording sessions for self-review highlights areas for improvement, revealing unconscious movements or expressions that undermine authority. Over time, deliberate repetition creates fluidity and natural alignment between thought, intent, and physical expression. The room perceives confidence not as a performance, but as a natural consequence of integrated mental and physical preparation. Stress management is integral to commanding presence. Pressure, confrontation, or unexpected challenges often disrupt the posture, tone, and gesture. Techniques such as controlled breathing, mental grounding, and pre-performance visualizations stabilize the body and mind, preserving authority. The capacity to maintain composure under adversity signals strength and reliability, reinforcing influence. Physical steadiness in tension communicates resilience and competence, both of which inspire respect and adherence. Engaging attention involves rhythm and pacing. Movement, gestures, and vocal inflection should follow a deliberate cadence that directs focus to key points. Strategic pauses, shifts in stance, or changes in facial expression create emphasis, drawing attention to critical messages without verbal interruption. The orchestration of these elements mirrors the natural patterns of attention, ensuring that communication is both memorable and influential. A deliberate tempo allows the audience to follow, process, and internalize key ideas, reinforcing authority through controlled engagement. Integration of storytelling with body language enhances influence. When narratives are delivered with aligned posture, gesture, and expression, their impact multiplies. Key moments in a story can be emphasized through movement or pauses, facial reactions, or open gestures, creating an immersive experience that resonates cognitively and emotionally. Physical embodiment of narrative principles reinforces decision-making, understanding, and commitment. This alignment between content and physicality ensures the story is not only heard but experienced, strengthening persuasion organically. Commanding a room requires patience and awareness. Authority is not established instantaneously, but develops as the audience perceives steadiness, reliability, and composure over time. Strategic observation, measured adjustments, and consistent presence consolidate influence. Avoid reactive movements or rush gestures. Each motion should reinforce clarity, intent, and confidence. Awareness of collective energy, individual reactions, and environmental cues allows for adaptive modulation of posture, movement, and expression without compromising authority. The person who masters body language commands attention naturally. Presence becomes the vehicle through which ideas are perceived as credible, decisions as logical, and leadership as authentic. Every posture, gesture, and micro-expression aligns with internal clarity, projecting authority without intimidation or coercion. Mastery of these principles transforms interactions from transactional exchanges into environments of influence, respect, and alignment. Physical discipline, awareness, and intentionality create an unspoken language that guides, inspires, and directs, establishing command of the room before a single word is spoken. The integration of posture, gesture, gaze, and movement allows influence to emerge seamlessly, leaving a lasting impression that is felt as much as it is observed, and establishing authority as a natural extension of presence, preparation, and composure. Number 6. Ask questions that shift power. Questions are among the most potent tools for influence, yet they are often underutilized. The right question, posed with precision and timing, shifts the focus of a conversation, illuminates hidden assumptions, and guides decision-making. It is not the answer alone that creates leverage. It is the question that shapes perception, frames priorities, and subtly redirects power. Those who master questioning control the narrative without confrontation, revealing clarity where there was ambiguity and guiding outcomes without force. The art of asking questions that shift power is grounded in strategy, psychology, and presence, transforming dialogue into an instrument of influence. Begin with the principle that questions define frames. A poorly worded question can reinforce someone else's assumptions or concede authority. Conversely, a well-crafted question reshapes the context, highlighting possibilities, risks, or opportunities that the other person may have overlooked. For instance, instead of asking, "Do you agree with this plan?" which invites a simple yes or no, ask, "What would happen if we implemented this approach tomorrow?" This reframing redirects attention from opinion to consequence, subtly shifting control of the discussion toward exploration and evaluation rather than validation. Strategic timing amplifies impact. Questions delivered too early may appear confrontational, while questions that are delayed can miss critical windows of influence. Observe the flow of conversation, noting pauses, uncertainties, or hesitation in others' speech. These moments often provide openings where a single well-timed question can guide focus, clarify assumptions, or provoke deeper thought. Silence before asking a question magnifies attention. It signals that the moment is deliberate and that the inquiry carries significance. The listener becomes attuned to the question, creating an opportunity for influence through reflection rather than argument. Questions can reveal hidden information. Every conversation carries unspoken assumptions, priorities, and motives. Asking targeted questions uncovers these layers, granting insight into others' perspectives and constraints. For example, what criteria are most important in your evaluation, or which risks concern you the most? Surfaces underlying drivers without appearing intrusive. By gathering this intelligence, the questioner positions themselves to frame subsequent dialogue, propose solutions, or guide decisions from an informed vantage point. Knowledge obtained through questioning empowers influence with precision and respect. Open-ended questions are particularly effective in shifting power because they compel reflection rather than rote response. Questions that begin with how, what, or why invite detailed explanation and thought. They slow impulsive reactions, encouraging the listener to engage cognitively with the issue. For instance, asking, "How do you see this approach impacting long-term objectives?" prompts analysis rather than immediate judgment. Open-ended inquiries create intellectual space for the questioner to guide the trajectory of thought without directly asserting dominance, subtly transferring authority through engagement. Embedded assumptions within questions shape outcomes. A question that presupposes an answer nudges the conversation in a particular direction. For instance, asking, "What steps should we take to ensure success?" assumes success is the goal and frames the discussion toward action rather than debate. Carefully calibrated questions leverage this mechanism ethically, emphasizing constructive direction while maintaining openness. Questions should guide rather than dictate, allowing the listener to arrive at conclusions that align with the intended objective without feeling coerced. Questions can also redirect attention and focus energy. In moments of conflict, ambiguity, or distraction, Asking a clarifying question restores control. For example, what is the most critical factor we need to resolve first? Shifts the conversation from complaint or disagreement to priority evaluation. This tactic focuses cognitive and emotional resources on meaningful engagement, rather than reactive or defensive dialogue. Power in conversation often rests in the ability to define what matters most, and strategic questioning is the primary instrument for that definition. The tone and delivery of a question are as important as the content. Calm, composed, and deliberate phrasing conveys authority, even when the question is exploratory. Avoid interrogative tones that signal accusation or insecurity. A steady, neutral voice fosters receptivity, encouraging thoughtful responses rather than defensive reactions. Timing, pacing, and rhythm reinforce the perception that the questioner is composed and in control, subtly transferring influence without overt pressure. Sequential questioning multiplies impact. Layering questions strategically can guide thought step by step. Begin with broad inquiries to establish understanding, then narrow to specifics that illuminate critical points. Each question should build on the previous answer, creating a trajectory that leads the listener to reconsider assumptions, recognize gaps, or explore new possibilities. This structured approach transforms questioning from simple information gathering into a methodical tool of influence, gradually shifting control while maintaining respect and engagement. Questions can challenge assumptions without confrontation. Instead of stating disagreement directly, framing a question to highlight potential gaps or alternative perspectives encourages reflection. For example, what might be the consequences if we considered the opposite approach? Invites the listener to explore possibilities without feeling attacked. This method preserves rapport, nurtures collaboration, and positions the questioner as a guide rather than an adversary. Skillful use of inquiry allows power to shift subtly while maintaining alignment and trust. Listening is inseparable from effective questioning. The value of a question depends on attentiveness to the answer. Active listening ensures follow-up questions are relevant, insightful, and aligned with the evolving conversation. Mirroring key words, summarizing points, or pausing to confirm understanding signals engagement while reinforcing authority. Influence emerges not from the number of questions asked, but from the quality of attention devoted to the response. By demonstrating understanding, the questioner strengthens credibility and subtly shifts power through insight rather than assertion. Practice builds instinctive mastery. Begin by identifying the questions that guide decisions in routine contexts. Then expand to complex or high-stakes interactions. Journaling or rehearsing scenarios allows refinement of wording, sequencing, and timing. Over time, the capacity to ask penetrating, contextually sensitive questions becomes natural, creating influence through subtle guidance rather than explicit control. Daily exercises in curiosity, reflection, and framing sharpen the mind's ability to detect opportunities for impactful questioning. Ethical consideration ensures influence through questions is sustainable. Questions should illuminate, clarify, and guide, not manipulate or deceive. The most powerful inquiries respect autonomy, foster understanding, and encourage informed decision-making. When questioning aligns with integrity, the resulting shift in power is accepted and internalized rather than resisted. Authority earned through thoughtful inquiry generates lasting respect, trust, and alignment. The person who masters the art of asking questions that shift power creates a dynamic where others participate in their own persuasion. Influence becomes a natural consequence of curiosity, insight, and presence. Each question opens a doorway to clarity. Each pause invites reflection, and each follow-up guides thought with precision. Questions are not interruptions. They are instruments for creating focus, redirecting energy, and facilitating informed action. Those who wield them effectively gain authority, illuminate complexity, and guide outcomes while preserving respect and collaboration. Over time, deliberate strategic questioning transforms every interaction into an opportunity to steer dialogue, shape perception, and achieve alignment, demonstrating that influence is earned not through statements alone, but through the thoughtful, intentional art of inquiry. Number 7. Persuade ethically using proven psychology. Persuasion is often misunderstood as manipulation, Yet true influence is grounded in ethics, clarity, and understanding human psychology. Ethical persuasion does not seek to coerce or deceive. It aligns desires, values, and objectives, allowing decisions to emerge naturally from insight rather than pressure. Psychology provides the tools to understand motivations, anticipate resistance, and communicate effectively, but the guiding principle remains integrity. When persuasion respects autonomy while appealing to reasoning and emotion, influence is sustainable, trust is maintained, and outcomes become mutually beneficial rather than imposed. The first step is understanding the human decision-making process. People are driven by a combination of cognitive biases, emotional triggers, and social cues. Ethical persuasion leverages these mechanisms responsibly, helping individuals make choices that align with both their needs and the persuader's goals. For instance, the principle of reciprocity, the instinct to return a favor, can be used to create goodwill, provide genuine value, and then propose a recommendation. When applied ethically, reciprocity fosters trust and collaboration rather than indebtedness or manipulation. Clarity of intention underpins every persuasive effort. The mind can detect ambiguity and hidden agendas. Transparency increases credibility and influence. Before presenting an argument or proposal, define the desired outcome clearly, then examine whether it aligns with the interests of those being persuaded. Communicate purpose openly, and focus on benefits for all parties. Ethical persuasion emerges from the alignment of self-interest with collective interest, creating an environment in which people feel empowered to choose freely rather than pressured. Storytelling, supported by psychological insight, enhances persuasion. Narratives engage emotion, simplify complex ideas, and illustrate outcomes. People are wired to respond to patterns, characters, and consequences. A well-constructed story translates abstract concepts into relatable experiences. For instance, demonstrating the impact of a product, strategy, or decision through a real-life case study or scenario allows the audience to simulate outcomes mentally. This connection between narrative and cognition leverages the human tendency to learn from examples, making recommendations compelling without coercion. Social proof is a psychologically powerful tool that can be applied ethically. Humans often look to peers or respected authorities to guide behavior. Highlighting credible examples, testimonials, or widely accepted practices demonstrates relevance and builds confidence in a proposed action. The key is honesty. Only present genuine examples and avoid exaggeration. Authentic social proof reassures the audience and encourages alignment, leveraging innate tendencies toward trust and conformity in ways that respect autonomy and intelligence. Framing effects are another powerful mechanism. The way information is presented influences perception and decision-making. Emphasize potential gains rather than losses when appropriate, and highlight relevant context that supports informed choice. Framing should clarify rather than manipulate. For example, presenting a recommendation as an opportunity to achieve specific objectives, rather than as a solution to avoid negative outcomes, guides focus constructively. Proper framing respects cognitive patterns, while enhancing comprehension and motivation. Reciprocal listening is essential in ethical persuasion. Attention to others' perspectives, concerns, and priorities demonstrates empathy and builds trust. By reflecting understanding and integrating feedback into proposals, the persuader creates a collaborative environment where the other party feels heard and valued. This approach increases openness to influence because decisions emerge from mutual understanding rather than unilateral pressure. Listening ethically is a mechanism of power that fosters connection, insight, and voluntary alignment. Anchoring is a subtle yet effective psychological tool. Presenting a reference point, whether a fact, statistic, or standard, sets a baseline that guides perception and evaluation. When used ethically, anchoring helps people contextualize choices and make informed decisions. For example, demonstrating the typical range of investment outcomes before proposing an option frames expectations and facilitates rational evaluation. Anchoring shapes perception without deception, helping the audience assess alternatives intelligently. Scarcity can influence urgency, but must be applied responsibly. Genuine scarcity, limited availability of time, resources, or opportunities, motivates attention and prioritization. Overstating scarcity undermines trust, while honest communication about constraints encourages timely, deliberate action. The ethical application of scarcity aligns the natural human tendency to prioritize rare opportunities with the decision-making process, enhancing focus without inducing fear or manipulation. Commitment and consistency are psychological principles that support ethical persuasion. People tend to act in ways consistent with prior statements, values, or behaviors. Encouraging small, voluntary agreements establishes alignment incrementally, building momentum for larger decisions. Each step reinforces credibility and participation while respecting autonomy. By guiding choices gradually and transparently, influence becomes a process of mutual engagement rather than pressure or coercion. Emotion and reason should be balanced. Ethical persuasion engages the mind and the heart simultaneously, addressing rational evaluation and emotional resonance. Provide clear evidence, logical structure, and factual support, while connecting ideas to values, aspirations, and experiences. Emotional engagement makes concepts memorable and meaningful, while rational clarity ensures decisions are informed and defensible. Persuasion that neglects either aspect risks superficial compliance or rejection. Integration creates alignment and enduring influence. Repetition and reinforcement must be applied judiciously. Presenting core principles or recommendations consistently helps embed understanding and encourages informed adoption. Repetition should clarify and emphasize rather than manipulate or wear down resistance. Reinforcing messages through multiple channels, examples, narratives, data, solidifies comprehension and trust. Ethical repetition respects attention and intellect, enhancing retention without coercion. Preparation strengthens influence. Anticipate questions, objections, and alternative viewpoints, then craft responses grounded in psychology and evidence. Being ready demonstrates competence, reduces reactive tendencies, and allows persuasive efforts to remain calm, focused, and credible. Preparation also supports ethical integrity. Informed advocates can guide decisions responsibly, ensuring that persuasion serves constructive goals rather than personal gain alone. Ethical persuasion is a practice of self-awareness. Reflect on motives, methods, and potential impacts of influence. Ensure alignment with moral principles and long-term relationship goals. Influence that disregards ethics may yield short-term gains, but erodes trust, credibility, and reputation. By cultivating self-discipline, empathy, and clarity, persuasion becomes a sustainable skill that generates respect, cooperation, and meaningful outcomes. Observation and adaptation enhance effectiveness. Monitor verbal and nonverbal responses to gauge comprehension, engagement, and receptivity. Adjust tone, pacing, examples, and emphasis accordingly. Adaptive persuasion respects the audience's autonomy and cognitive style, ensuring that influence is responsive rather than coercive. Flexibility demonstrates skill, attentiveness, and consideration, reinforcing credibility and ethical authority. The person who masters ethical persuasion using psychological principles becomes a facilitator of informed, confident, and constructive decisions. Influence is not imposed, it is guided. Each recommendation is framed transparently, grounded in evidence, and aligned with values. Each story, example, and analogy leverages human cognition without deception. Questions are used to illuminate thought, not manipulate. Emotional and rational pathways are engaged simultaneously, fostering comprehension and alignment. Influence becomes the natural consequence of preparation, insight, empathy, and integrity, leaving decisions informed, relationships strengthened, and authority earned rather than claimed. Ethical persuasion transforms communication from mere advocacy into a disciplined practice of guiding understanding, shaping outcomes responsibly, and creating lasting alignment that benefits all parties involved. Number 8. Handle objections with tactical empathy. Objections are not obstacles to influence. They are opportunities to deepen understanding, build trust, and guide decisions. The instinctive reaction to push back against disagreement often escalates tension, reinforces resistance, and erodes credibility. Tactical empathy transforms these moments into leverage, allowing influence to emerge through connection rather than force. It is the skill of identifying, articulating, and validating the emotions, concerns, and perspectives of others, while guiding the conversation toward constructive resolution. Mastery of this approach requires patience, awareness, and deliberate communication that balances listening, reflection, and strategic response. The first principle is active perception. Every objection contains more than the surface-level concern. It carries emotion, underlying assumptions, and priorities. Listening without interrupting creates the mental space to discern these layers. Observe tone, word choice, pace, and body language. Identify what is being expressed explicitly and what is implied. By attending to these signals, the responder can acknowledge the true essence of the objection, demonstrating understanding and authority simultaneously. Tactical empathy begins with awareness, the recognition that behind every no or doubt lies a human experience that can be acknowledged, respected, and addressed. Validation is critical. People naturally resist when they feel unheard or dismissed. Tactical empathy allows acknowledgement of emotion without conceding the argument prematurely. Phrases like, "I understand why this could be concerning," or "it makes sense to view it that way given the circumstances," create an environment of psychological safety. Validating does not mean agreement. It means recognition. By showing that the objection has been considered, the speaker reduces defensiveness, creating a space in which dialogue becomes productive rather than adversarial. Validation transforms opposition into collaboration, converting tension into exploration. The next step is reframing. Once the underlying concerns are identified, recontextualize them in a manner that aligns with desired outcomes. This involves bridging the gap between the other person's perspective and the intended solution. For instance, if someone resists change due to perceived risk, frame the discussion around mitigated risk, potential benefits, and logical progression. Reframing shifts the cognitive lens without dismissing emotion, guiding the listener toward reconsideration while maintaining their autonomy. Tactical empathy leverages reframing as a subtle, ethical form of influence that honors the objection while advancing clarity and resolution. Effective questioning amplifies the impact of tactical empathy. Open-ended inquiries encourage reflection and disclosure, revealing motivations, constraints, and values that inform the objection. Questions such as, "What would make this approach feel more feasible for you?" or "Which aspects of this proposal concern you the most?" invite detailed response while signaling attentiveness. These questions redirect the focus from confrontation to problem solving. They also shift the locus of control subtly toward collaboration, allowing the objector to participate in generating solutions rather than feeling coerced into agreement. Mirroring and paraphrasing reinforce understanding. Reflecting the other person's words and emotions demonstrates comprehension and builds rapport. Simple techniques, such as repeating a key phrase or summarizing their perspective, convey attentiveness, encourage further elaboration, and reinforce the perception of connection. Mirroring validates the speaker's experience while maintaining the responder's composure and direction. This method creates a sense of partnership, showing that influence is not imposed but co-created through shared understanding. Managing emotion is paramount. Objections often carry frustration, skepticism, or fear. Tactical empathy requires maintaining composure while acknowledging these emotions. Control of tone, pacing, and nonverbal signals ensures that influence is preserved rather than undermined by reactive defensiveness. Pausing before responding allows reflection, the selection of precise language, and alignment with strategic intent. A steady, calm presence signals authority and reliability, which increases the likelihood that the objection will be addressed thoughtfully and constructively. Providing context and rationale is essential once the objection has been acknowledged. Explanations should be clear, logical, and empathetic, demonstrating respect for the objector's perspective. Present information in a way that bridges their concerns to the solution. For example, connect risks to mitigation strategies or challenges to tangible benefits. When the rationale is framed in alignment with the other person's priorities, objections are reframed as considerations rather than barriers. Tactical empathy transforms reasoning into partnership, guiding perception rather than forcing compliance. Storytelling can enhance the resolution of objections. Sharing examples, analogies, or relevant experiences. Illustrates solutions concretely while resonating emotionally. Narratives provide a framework for understanding, allowing the listener to mentally simulate outcomes. Stories also humanize abstract ideas, demonstrating how similar challenges were navigated successfully. This approach aligns with tactical empathy because it addresses cognitive and emotional dimensions simultaneously, offering clarity without confrontation. Examples validate the objector's concern while gently guiding toward resolution. Anticipation strengthens effectiveness. Understanding common objections in advance allows preparation of empathetic, informed responses. Anticipation does not imply scripted replies. Rather, it enables the responder to remain composed, recognize patterns, and address concerns thoughtfully. By forecasting resistance, the communicator reduces surprises, preserves authority, and enhances trust. Tactical empathy is amplified when responses appear intuitive and sensitive, reflecting both attentiveness and competence. Integration of pause and silence reinforces influence. After acknowledging an objection, allow space for reflection. Avoid filling silence prematurely, which can signal insecurity or eagerness. Thoughtful pauses create cognitive breathing room for the other person to internalize recognition, consider alternatives, and move toward alignment. Silence is a tool of patience, letting tactical empathy operate unobtrusively. It emphasizes respect, attentiveness, and control, subtly shifting the dynamic in favor of constructive resolution. Iterative feedback consolidates progress. After addressing objections, observe reactions, seek confirmation of understanding, and remain responsive to lingering concerns. Engagement becomes cyclical rather than linear, with each exchange reinforcing connection, trust, and alignment. Tactical empathy is a dynamic process. Objections are addressed not as endpoints, but as opportunities for dialogue, adaptation, and mutual refinement. This continuous attention ensures that influence is sustainable, grounded, and relational. The individual who masters handling objections with tactical empathy transforms resistance into opportunity. Influence is exercised not through force, but through deep understanding, validation, and strategic guidance. Each objection is recognized as an entry point for dialogue, each pause and reflection as a moment to cultivate trust, and each narrative or rationale as a bridge toward alignment. Tactical empathy strengthens relationships, fosters collaboration, and establishes authority through connection rather than coercion. Over time, this approach shifts power subtly yet decisively, allowing influence to emerge organically, ensuring decisions are informed, respected, and supported. Mastery of this skill transforms every interaction into a disciplined practice of understanding, guiding, and aligning, demonstrating that objections are not barriers but catalysts for clarity, cooperation, and enduring impact. Number 9. Influence outcomes with strategic framing. Framing is one of the most powerful tools of influence because it shapes perception before a decision is even considered. People rarely evaluate information in isolation. The way a situation, choice, or argument is presented defines its context, highlighting certain aspects while minimizing others. Strategic framing allows you to guide attention, emphasize priorities, and align outcomes with objectives without force or manipulation. It is the subtle art of positioning ideas, circumstances, or decisions so that the natural response of the audience aligns with the intended direction. Mastery of this skill combines clarity, empathy, and foresight, transforming communication into a tool that shapes reality rather than simply reacts to it. The first principle of strategic framing is defining the reference point. Every situation has multiple perspectives, and which one is emphasized determines interpretation. By establishing a clear frame, you guide attention to specific variables, risks, or opportunities. For example, presenting a new initiative as a rare opportunity to gain advantage positions it positively, while framing it as a response to a looming problem emphasizes urgency and risk mitigation. The choice of reference point establishes context, directing cognitive focus and shaping initial perceptions. Strategic framing is most effective when the chosen frame resonates with values, priorities, or goals that are meaningful to the audience. Language and terminology are critical in framing outcomes. Words carry subtle connotations that influence thought and emotion. Descriptive precision, selective vocabulary, and phrasing that aligns with the intended frame help embed the desired perspective. Consider how describing a budget as an investment in growth versus a necessary expense immediately alters interpretation and willingness to engage. Framing through language leverages natural cognitive biases, making the presented scenario intuitive and compelling. Strategic word choice allows influence without overt pressure, letting perception itself lead toward alignment. Contrast is a key framing mechanism. Presenting alternatives, comparisons, or trade-offs helps clarify decisions and highlight advantages. For instance, illustrating the benefits of one option alongside the limitations of another accentuates value without direct assertion. The contrast should be logical, transparent, and fair, reinforcing credibility while guiding evaluation. Strategic framing through comparison shifts focus from abstract preference to tangible differences, making outcomes clearer and more persuasive. People naturally process relative information more effectively than absolute data, creating an opportunity to guide perception ethically and effectively. Visual and structural framing strengthens influence. Organizing information in ways that highlight patterns, priorities, or consequences enhances comprehension and alignment. Charts, graphs, or structured narratives create frames that support reasoning and decision-making. Similarly, structuring communication to lead with critical points and follow with supporting evidence directs attention intentionally. The combination of visual and verbal framing ensures that key elements are prominent, supporting natural alignment with the intended outcome. The human mind responds to patterns and organization, and effective framing leverages this cognitive preference to influence understanding and choice. Emotion and framing are inseparable. Strategic framing considers how narratives, examples, and context evoke feelings that guide decision-making, highlighting potential benefits, positive impacts, or aspirational outcomes can generate motivation, while illustrating risks, challenges, or losses can heighten urgency. The key is balance. Ethical framing engages emotion to illuminate decisions without manipulation. When emotion is integrated thoughtfully, the audience experiences the intended priorities as meaningful, actionable, and relevant. Framing becomes a lens through which decisions feel natural rather than imposed. Timing and sequencing affect how frames are received. The order in which information is presented shapes perception. Leading with the most relevant or compelling points captures attention and establishes the context for subsequent details. Delaying supporting data until after a compelling frame is introduced allows the audience to process information through the intended lens. Sequencing should be deliberate. The trajectory of perception guides the evaluation process step by step. Strategic framing is therefore not just about content, but about the flow of communication and the architecture of understanding. Anchoring is another essential aspect of framing. Initial exposure to specific figures, concepts, or standards sets expectations and benchmarks that influence interpretation of subsequent information. Ethical anchoring provides context, helping the audience evaluate choices with clarity. For example, presenting industry averages before proposing a target goal frames it as realistic and aspirational simultaneously. The first reference point establishes mental parameters, subtly guiding evaluation and decision-making. Strategic framing uses anchoring to structure thought without misleading or coercing. Questions can reinforce framing subtly by directing focus and shaping perspective. Asking reflective questions like, what impact would achieving this outcome have on your long-term goals? Or how does this approach compare to previous strategies? Encourages the audience to evaluate information through the frame provided. Questions guide thought without direct assertion, allowing the individual to arrive at the conclusion while internalizing the priorities highlighted by the framing. Strategic framing and tactical questioning often work together, creating alignment through guided reflection rather than episms. Anticipating resistance is essential. Frames are most effective when potential objections, doubts, or alternative interpretations are considered and addressed in advance. By integrating acknowledgement of counterpoints within the frame itself, the communicator reduces friction and increases the likelihood that the intended perspective will be accepted. This approach signals awareness, builds trust, and reinforces authority. Strategic framing, therefore, is proactive, ethical, and anticipatory, ensuring that influence is embedded in both presentation and perception. Repetition and reinforcement solidify the frame. Key points, visual cues, or narratives should be reiterated thoughtfully to embed understanding without causing fatigue. Reinforcement strengthens memory, enhances recall, and ensures the frame guides future consideration. Ethical framing uses repetition to clarify rather than manipulate, creating alignment through comprehension rather than pressure. The mind naturally prioritizes repeated patterns, so consistent emphasis supports sustained influence. Observation and adaptation enhance effectiveness. Monitoring responses, verbal, emotional, and nonverbal, allows the communicator to refine the frame in real time, adjusting emphasis, clarifying points, or recontextualizing examples ensures alignment while maintaining credibility. Strategic framing is not rigid. It is responsive, ethical, and dynamic, adapting to feedback while preserving intended outcomes. This flexibility strengthens influence because it respects perception, accommodates understanding, and integrates insight into communication. Integration with broader communication strategies maximizes impact. Framing interacts with body language, vocal tone, questioning, and storytelling to create a cohesive influence architecture. Consistency between verbal, nonverbal, and contextual signals reinforces credibility and guides attention naturally. Misalignment between frame and expression undermines authority, while synergy amplifies influence. The strategic communicator aligns every element of delivery with the intended frame, ensuring perception and reality are congruent. The individual who masters influencing outcomes with strategic framing shapes decisions before explicit evaluation begins. Perception, attention, and priorities are guided ethically, aligning understanding with desired objectives. Frames clarify context, highlight significance, and emphasize actionable pathways, all while respecting autonomy and integrity. Strategic framing integrates language, narrative, structure, emotion, and observation to guide thought subtly, yet decisively. Those who wield it with discipline, foresight, and empathy create environments in which outcomes emerge naturally. Alignment is achieved voluntarily, and influence is both ethical and enduring. Mastery of framing transforms communication from reactive expression into proactive guidance, allowing understanding, alignment, and decision-making to unfold in a deliberate, coherent, and persuasive manner. Number 10. Practice daily routines for mastery. Mastery is not a sudden achievement. It is the cumulative result of deliberate, consistent practice over time. Excellence in thinking, speaking, and influencing emerges from daily routines that reinforce skill, sharpen awareness, and cultivate discipline. The individual who achieves mastery does so not through sporadic effort or fleeting inspiration, but through structured repetition, reflection, and refinement. Daily routines serve as the scaffolding for growth, creating predictable habits that shape behavior, internalize principles, and align actions with long-term objectives. These routines are not arbitrary. They are intentional practices that compound, each repetition strengthening competence and confidence. Begin with mental preparation. Each day, dedicate time to focus the mind, set intentions, and clarify priorities. Visualization exercises that simulate challenging interactions, persuasive conversations, or high-stakes decision-making reinforce cognitive patterns and build resilience. Mentally rehearsing scenarios cultivates fluidity of thought, allowing responses to emerge naturally under pressure. This internal groundwork anchors external performance, ensuring that composure, clarity, and influence are habitual rather than reactive. The discipline of daily mental preparation trains the mind to operate with precision, confidence, and foresight. Reflection is a cornerstone of mastery. At the end of each day, evaluate actions, decisions, and interactions. Identify moments of strength, areas for improvement, and patterns of thought that require adjustment. Journaling these reflections consolidates learning, transforms experience into insight, and illuminates blind spots. Structured reflection prevents repetition of ineffective habits, while reinforcing successful strategies. Daily evaluation cultivates self-awareness, the foundation upon which all other skills are built. Mastery is a process of continuous refinement, and reflection ensures that each day contributes meaningfully to growth. Practice of core skills should be deliberate and varied. Speaking, writing, influencing, and problem-solving all benefit from targeted exercises. Reading aloud, recording presentations, and analyzing body language or tone allows detailed observation and correction. Role-playing difficult conversations or persuasive scenarios develops flexibility and responsiveness. Structured practice ensures that improvement is measurable, focused, and incremental. Repetition alone is insufficient. It must be purposeful, aligned with objectives, and reinforced with feedback to create lasting competence. Physical routines support cognitive and communicative mastery. Posture, breath control, and movement influence presence and confidence. Daily exercises that strengthen awareness of posture, alignment, and breathing patterns integrate physical readiness into mental performance. Simple practices such as standing tall while speaking, controlling breath during reading, or monitoring gestures in front of a mirror embed physical habits that reinforce authority, clarity, and calmness. Mastery is holistic. Body and mind function together to project influence effectively. Observation and study of others accelerate skill development. Daily routines should include analysis of exemplary communicators, negotiators, or leaders. Note how they frame ideas, respond to objections, and command attention. Study pacing, tone, gesture, and timing. Identify principles that can be adapted and incorporated into personal practice. Observational learning supplements, active rehearsal, providing diverse perspectives and strategies. Regular engagement with high-level models cultivates insight, intuition, and versatility, enhancing mastery through informed imitation and adaptation. Integration of feedback into daily practice is essential. Constructive critique, whether from mentors, peers, or self-assessment, guides refinement and accelerates learning. Establish routines to review feedback systematically, identify actionable steps, and implement adjustments. Feedback loops ensure that practice is not isolated or repetitive. Without improvement, mastery grows from the intersection of effort and insight. Daily incorporation of feedback transforms activity into deliberate progress. Time management is a critical routine for sustaining mastery. Prioritize tasks that enhance core competencies, balancing practice with reflection, study, and execution. Allocate blocks of time for focused skill building, ensuring that each day contributes meaningfully to cumulative growth. Structured scheduling reduces distraction, increases consistency, and reinforces discipline. The rhythm of deliberate effort creates momentum, embedding mastery into the fabric of daily life. Emotional regulation is a daily practice that underpins influence in decision-making. Mastery requires composure under stress, resilience in the face of challenges, and patience during complex interactions. Techniques such as mindfulness, controlled breathing, and situational reflection train emotional responses, allowing clarity and authority to persist even in high-pressure situations. Daily reinforcement of emotional discipline ensures that influence is exercised thoughtfully and that decisions are guided by rationality and perspective, rather than reaction or impulse. Integration of learning from diverse sources enriches daily routines. Engage with literature, case studies, psychology, and philosophy to expand understanding of human behavior, persuasion, and communication. Structured reading and study provide conceptual frameworks that inform practice and enhance adaptability. Exposure to varied perspectives strengthens reasoning, creativity, and empathy. Daily intellectual nourishment cultivates depth and breadth, ensuring that mastery is not narrow, but versatile and informed. Micro-habits compound over time. Small, consistent actions, such as reviewing notes, practicing articulation, visualizing scenarios, or reflecting on interactions, aggregate into substantial improvement. Daily attention to details, incremental refinement, and deliberate repetition create proficiency that feels effortless in execution. Mastery is the sum of countless small decisions to invest time and focus in skills that compound gradually yet exponentially. Accountability reinforces consistency. Daily routines should include tracking progress, setting measurable objectives, and reviewing achievements. Accountability transforms intention into action, ensuring that practice is not neglected or superficial. Measuring incremental progress allows for recalibration and sustains motivation. Mastery is reinforced through daily attention to results, habits, and alignment with long-term vision. The individual who practices daily routines for mastery aligns mind, body, and environment with deliberate growth. Each day becomes a building block, integrating reflection, rehearsal, observation, feedback, and emotional regulation into a coherent system. Mastery emerges from this disciplined accumulation, transforming skill into instinct, preparation into performance, and effort into influence. The compounding effect of consistent, structured practice elevates thinking, speaking, and influencing from sporadic ability to habitual excellence. Daily routines are the scaffolding that supports lasting competence, ensuring that mastery is not an abstract goal but a lived, embodied reality that grows steadily, predictably, and powerfully over time.